HistoryNet and Mr. Brass are interviewing Bill Ledlow tonight. How are you, sir?
Good. How are you?
Not bad.
Am I getting feedback there?
I've seen you around. I remember History actually showed me one of your videos. I believe it was going against Kent Hovind. It was pretty good. I think you really did a number on him on that one.
Thanks. Yeah, that was back in July of 2017. So, yeah. Yeah, it was right when Kent started debating again. He hadn't really debated much up until that point. He'd been out of prison for a couple of years, but he did a couple, I think, just minor debates. Then he debated King Crocoduck right before he debated me too on the Steve McRae's channel, the Great Debate Community channel. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right, so tell us all about yourself, your backstory, your beliefs, etc.
Me? Well, okay, I'm 56 years old. I live in Arizona, originally from Michigan. I've been atheist, pretty much been an atheist all my life. Was in retail for about 25 years, started my own company about 12 years ago. Pretty much work part-time now, and I devote some of my time to volunteering at our local museum. I teach human origins. Most of the time, it's children that come in on field trips during the week from public schools, or it can be private, charter schools too, and do a lot of special events with them. I'm an active member of the Southwest Paleontological Society, go on a lot of field digs and things like that around here. Also do some of my own independent research. And one of the things I discovered here in Arizona, it was about 5 years ago now, discovered a bunch of 270 million year old pre-dinosaur reptile tracks up on the Mogollon Rim, about 100 miles from where I live. That was, it turned out, I found just a few tracks originally. Went to our local museum here, talked with the people I knew there, and they were like, well, they're pretty common. And this guy over here in New Mexico is like the national authority. Go talk to him on those, So they weren't that interested. They just didn't think it was much of a big deal. Well, as of this last fall, I'm up to 94 sets of tracks, totaling probably close to 1,000 tracks total. 2 different types that haven't been found in the Coconino sandstone before. And we got a paper coming out real soon within the next 2 months. Gave a presentation on it at the regional meeting of the Geological Society of America in Flagstaff last year. And so it turned out to be a fairly decent find, one of the largest concentrated track sites in the Southwest. And but we depend a lot on water levels. It's around a reservoir, so we can't always have access to the tracks. Some years they're underwater, and other years, like last year, was a historical low, and so we were able to really find a lot more.
It's climate change.
Yeah, a lot of it here is just drought, regional drought, and then combined with which reservoir they decide to pull the water from for the cities around there that year. They kind of go in cycle with that too. So, if they draw one down quite a ways, then it happens to be that one, then it's good for us. We get to see more tracks. So,
I suppose. What led you to take up arms against young earthers?
Well, I didn't even know people like that existed until I was in college. I was in college in the early 80s, and I had a friend that I knew who had roommates that were young Earth creationists. And, we were hanging out, drinking beer on the weekends or whatever in his dorm, and these guys are talking about, the Earth being 6,000 years. I didn't know people like that really existed. So, this is back in days way before the internet and stuff. So I was just really surprised and, got into all these conversations with them, because at the time I'm taking some classes in geology and anthropology and stuff like that. And so that was my interest. And then running into people that were, totally opposed to what I was learning and trying to contradict it and argue about it. So that's where I found out about it. Then again, for probably 10, 15 years, I didn't think about it an awful lot, but I got my first computer Christmas of 1995, and I bought a compact with a smoking 200 whatever's Pentium, processor, and I had a 28.8 modem, and I was ready to go. So I joined AOL, got on the internet, and started finding these forums and things like that. Ran into that where people were talking about creationism and got interested in it and learned about people like Kent Hovind and Ken Ham
So you've been involved. So you've been involved in this young earther business since the '90s.
Yeah, really, since towards the late '90s, about 20 years, you know. So, but I mean, I wouldn't say overly involved in it. I mean, I didn't really spend that much time doing that much with it until the last 3 or 4 years, you know, as far as like myself, other than some minor discussions. I wasn't making any videos, doing any debates, you know, until the last 3 or 4 years. So.
And Comrade Dimitri decided to join us, our once in a while co-host.
Oh.
Привет. I am the Russian bot. No, I'm just hi.
How you doing?
Good. So what is it that you do exactly?
Well, I just kind of went over that. I mean, you know, as far as what I do, I mean, I own an entertainment company. I book bands for some local bars. I have karaoke shows, open mic nights, stuff like that. But I work myself about 15 hours a week, and I devote the rest of my time to paleontology and volunteering at the museum. So,
Comrade, you got a little background noise.
I do. Shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's actually pretty interesting that you've been around in these debates for so long. I mean, I imagine, like, what's one of the most commonly used arguments that you hear young Earth creationists bring up all the time?
Well, you know, it's changed a little over the years, but not much. You know, there's a lot of the stereotypical "you were there." We still see that, or were you there? I'm sorry. You still see that pretty much every day, almost all the time, at least in the Facebook groups and that. You know, things get popular. Of course, dinosaur soft tissue is a popular thing now. Wasn't until the last 10 years or so.
Still got a little noise, Comrade.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But, you know, honestly, the arguments haven't changed much. They haven't changed much over the last 20 years. You know, 90% of them are the same.
Yeah. Tell us about your experiences with your buddy Hovind.
Well, I don't know if I call him my buddy.
That's the joke.
A couple of interesting things. I know with Kent Hovind, you know, I just did the one debate. And I'd never met him prior to that, never spoken to him prior to that. I had contacted his organization, and I never called his 800 Dino number, but I had, you know, written to them, emailed them, tried to get him to debate, messages like that. I didn't want to be calling and stuff, but you know, I mean, I just never got responses. So when the great debate community, when they started holding the debates with him, I got a hold of Steve McRae and I said, "Hey, let me do this." I said, "I've been preparing for this for 20 years. You know, I know exactly what he's going to say." and I was right. So, but now Hovind the Younger, Eric, is an interesting character. He just visited the museum here in Mesa, Arizona, where I volunteer. About 2 weeks ago, he just put a video out today. And he put a video about it today on his, what is it, Creation Today or something, video channel and his website. Hamant Mehta, the friendly atheist, put out an article on it on his blog there. And it's kind of going, I wouldn't know about viral right now, but I mean, it's getting a lot of views. And I am going to be doing a video response to that in the next couple of days. And it'll be shared on the Friendly Atheist channel and stuff too. So that's going to be interesting. I mean, basically, Eric walked through the museum. They remarked at how beautiful it was, how great the displays were, but how we just got the facts wrong. And he walked along saying, "Not true, not true, not true, not true, not true." And you know, it's pretty funny, you know. I mean,
so that's pretty much like, isn't that what atheists pretty much do when they go to Ken Ham's museum?
Yeah, you know, The difference is I can't say that his displays are authentic. You know, I mean, no, I mean, in fact, the dinosaurs don't look like real dinosaurs. A lot of them, the kinds of animals that they are portraying don't look like any real historical or animal that we know of. They're not based on real fossils. They're based on what they think a kind looks like. A half horse, half zebra, or a canine kind or something like that.
Because animal classifications totally existed in the Bible days.
Right. So, I can't say that even the displays are based on reality. So it's a little different. Yeah.
Well, too much reality hurts Ken Ham's brain.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So tell me about you guys now. If you don't mind, if I ask you some questions. I mean, what I'm interested in is, were any of you raised as young Earth creationists?
Nope.
No. Okay.
No, my family didn't really care about it, and I briefly entertained the idea back in 2012, and then 6 months later, I found out it was total bullshit again.
Okay. So when you say your family didn't care about it, they didn't care about Christianity, or they didn't care about creation, the young Earth part of it?
They didn't care about young Earth. Or my old man's a deist.
Okay. Gotcha.
Same here, pretty much with me. Is my family was very nominally Christian. Like, they'll say they're Christian, but they really just don't do really anything that you would expect a Christian to do. Like, they drink, they do everything. So
They could be Catholic then, right?
Well, yeah, pretty much then. But
my Catholic grandmother would go to the bar after church service and have crabs and beer.
Well, yeah. So I mean, yeah. I only found out about young Earth creation. I had a little bit, I got a taste of it, when I was in middle school when we were going over evolution a bit, because the teacher was saying, the teacher just made a comment saying, oh, I'm not here to challenge any beliefs like that. I was saying, oh, I don't know how this would be challenging my beliefs, and later on, it was after the Ken Ham and Bill Nye debate when I got more into it. I said, oh, now everything makes sense, what that teacher was saying. So, but yeah, it really just never came up that as much. I remember I met a girl, and she was a young Earth creationist, and she wanted to be a veterinarian. I'm like, how the hell is that going to work out?
And for me, I grew up as an evangelical, but I had a Buddhist girlfriend in high school, and she introduced me to a lot of Buddhist religion and culture and philosophy. I was an agnostic for a while, and then I was kind of like a non-religious theist for a bit. Now I'm Eastern Orthodox. So that's a brief generalization of my religious upbringing. But I think creationism is really cancerous.
All right. Well, I asked because you mentioned the Bill Nye and Ken Ham debate. I met with a guy this week, Luke Douglas. He's the executive director of the Phoenix Humanist organization here. Humanist Society of Greater Phoenix is what they're called. And he's like a full-time executive director for them. They actually have a building, a facility and everything too. And he was recently, I mean, he was a young Earth creationist. I mean, he's in his, I would say, probably late 20s. Late 20s. He was in law school when the Bill Nye Ken Ham debate came out, and that was 2014. So it's pretty recent. Yeah. And that was one of the big things that changed his mind. And here he is now, executive director of a humanist organization. He's an atheist, but these humanists, I mean, he's looking to give more back to the community. These people are. They're more organized, but it's different than a typical atheist organization. They're not just politically motivated and stuff too. Their facility has weekly meetings where it's kind of like they have the self-help type groups and stuff, kind of like a 12-step program, but not for not tied to a religion, to people, help people with addictions and different things. They're doing some really great stuff, but it was the Bill Nye Ken Ham debate that kind of turned him around. This guy he owns a lifetime pass to the Creation Museum and the Ark Encounter. I mean, he had visited there many times and stuff.
Now,
it was given to him by a family member. So,
are you religious, or what's your religious background?
No, I had said at the beginning when you were here, no, I'm an atheist. I really have been all my life. I mean,
okay,
yeah, I just wouldn't consider myself an anti-theist. So,
Okay, yeah, yeah. We're not big fans of anti-theism and really intense and anti-religiosity. We love to talk to atheists, who are neutral about religion, open-minded, and or some are even pro-religion. So right. We get along just fine with those kind.
Yeah. I just don't think. I mean, especially if you're in a debate or if you're in a public discussion with people or even just writing about it, if you start talking about sky daddies and making reference to
Bronze Age goat herders,
goat herders and that kind of stuff, I mean, you're not gonna, all you're doing is throwing up a wall for them. You're not going to ever reach anybody. You're not going to make a difference. You might have people cheering you on that feel the same way, but that's all you're doing. I mean, you're not ever going to change anybody's mind. And and I'm not looking to change the world, but I can tell you, I've got dozens now of emails or personal messages that I've gotten from people that have encouraged me and said that it's made a difference. And especially the Kent Hovind debate has been a changing point for some people there. In these debates, you don't argue. About. That's why I told Kent Hovind, I'm not going to talk about the Bible. I don't want to talk about the Bible. I want to talk about creationism. What you've done with it. And your interpretation of it, how it stands against the real evidence. So. Yeah,
and I like your approach. Like, you don't go for the insults when you do response videos. You just use that chill voice of yours, and then you just get right to it.
Right. Yeah, I've been tempted sometimes, with some of these guys. What was that guy? The internet guy that I guess
Hovind sycophant. That's your new stalker.
No, not that guy. There's a guy I had a discussion with not too long ago. Nephilim Free.
Oh yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
We know.
Wow. What is this? I mean, it was like, oh my gosh, this guy. He just like literally makes things up. And you're looking at it and you're going.
When you mentioned him, I almost just choked on my sweet tea.
Yeah. He made this video saying that I didn't know creationist arguments, and that all the layers were, because I kept asking where the post-flood boundary is, where if there was a flood, what layers were made during the flood and what layers are above that. It should be obvious to everyone around the world. And he says, well, creationists don't say that there was one. And I'm like, yeah, they do. I mean, I showed him, I made a response video where I showed in literature where, creationists have argued about where the post-flood boundary is. They can't agree on it themselves. Anywhere from basically the end of the Cretaceous, 65 million years ago, which we could say 65 million years ago, to the Ice Age, somewhere in between there. Well, he's saying even the layers above that were flood. And he said all the layers are. And it's like, you don't know the creationist arguments, buddy. But I mean, he was rude, and he was, he just was somebody I'll never, once is enough.
Yeah, I remember what was funny is I was on Modern Day Debate one time, and we were just having like a little hangout. It was like me. It was supposed to be like me, James, and it was Nephilim Free, and it was I can't remember his other name. He's another creationist, a young Earth creationist.
Standing for truth.
Yes, that's him. And the thing is like, I actually didn't know Nephilim Free or Standing for Truth before then. So I remember, like, in the chat I was having with like Cyrus, Jackson, and the Hall and the rest, it was just funny because we got into evolution. I just like was saying how it doesn't really bother me, and then you get like Standing for Truth and Nephilim Free. They make the entire rest of the conversation about evolution and creationism and arguing from the Bible. And I'm like, I feel bad that I signed up for this because I didn't know these people beforehand.
Well, Standing for Truth knows the creationist arguments, but he comes across to me as somebody that has never really studied any of this. I mean, not from a non-creationist perspective. He's memorized the creationist arguments, but he really has never looked at biology, evolution, geology, any of those topics himself.
He just repeats the heretic Hovind verbatim.
Exactly. Yeah. And he's made some videos about me where he's taken things that I've done. I've pretty much ignored it because I didn't want to, keep going back and forth because it doesn't do any good with somebody like that. I mean, it's not productive. So,
well, it was just so funny. Like one time, it was literally this: is like he actually got on a Christian YouTuber named Inspiring Philosophy because he did a video on Genesis and he had to do a response because IP is a Old Earth Creationist,
evolutionist, theistic evolutionist, also
evolutionist. Sorry, and so he went on there, and so he did this response video, and basically, like, it was funny because one of the first things that came out of his mouth was, "Oh, well, you're using other cultures to understand the Bible." I'm like, yes, that's what scholars do. That's sort of like saying, "Oh, how dare you use the Declaration of Independence to for other writings that the founders did prior to that." It's like, yeah, you do that. That's how
the Magna Carta, which was an English document, influenced the Constitution.
Yeah. I noticed you also take fault with older creationists' approach to human origins.
Yeah.
The Hugh camp.
Right. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Basically the difference is young Earth creationists believe that, let's say Neanderthals are no different than us. I mean, that they are that they're descended from Adam and Eve, but they're also descended from Noah, I would say. Young Earth creationists, for the most part, think that Neanderthals are no different than a modern human being. Same species or kind.
Yeah, that's the old misconception that the stereotypical caveman was based on the Neanderthals.
Right, but Old Earth creationists, at least Hugh Ross, Fuzz Rana, they teach that Neanderthals were basically nothing much more than a chimpanzee. I mean, and that sounds crazy, but that's what they teach. I mean, Hugh Ross literally says they were apes that were a separate creation from the rest of humans, from us, and that they are basically just an ape. And so, both sides, I feel, have it wrong. I mean, Neanderthals are actually, and what we've learned about them through genetics in the last couple of decades are a great evidence for evolution, because.
Well, and also, I think they found in Scandinavia, there's the highest percentage of people modern humans who have Neanderthal DNA are in Scandinavia, the Nordic countries.
Okay. Yeah, I know it's up to 4% of your DNA is DNA. I'm 1.5%. I had mine done last year. So
oh wow.
Yeah, 1.5%. Now I meet people at the museum and we joke about it because I meet 4%ers all the time. I met a 4%er last week. One of the girls that volunteers at the museum now, along with me there, she's red-haired, freckled. She's 4%, so hit the max. But the interesting thing is that your 2% and my 1.5% maybe not from the same part of the genome of the Neanderthal. So actually over 20% of their genome is preserved in modern humans, because your percent and my percent might be from different parts of their genome. So there definitely was interbreeding there. And this is everybody outside of sub-Saharan Africa too. So
and it helped our immune system.
Yes, yeah. There's specific instances where things like the resistance to a certain plague, let's say, where it killed off 2/3 of the population in Europe, or part of
the Black Plague and
it was the Neanderthal contribution to the genome that helped the people that survive. So that helps weed out the people that didn't have as much Neanderthal in them too. So it's interesting. But what I was saying about how it's evidence for evolution is, if we were to predict, now it takes about 1 million years, is what scientists will say, for two species to diverge and become completely separate, what we would consider 100% separate species.
Yeah.
Okay, 1 million years. So what we're saying, and what we see with the fossil and genetic evidence with the Neanderthals, is that we diverged around 700,000 years ago. Okay, now there was some interbreeding still going on 500,000 years or 600,000 years after that. So 100,000, 150,000 years ago. So we still maintain some gene flow between the two, to where, again, we're not completely separate species. But it also shows that we don't ever see, or we haven't found yet, where we have influenced the Neanderthal genome. We only see where they have influenced our genome. So the most recent Neanderthal genomes that were completed, that are, say, 37 to 45,000 years old, don't show evidence of modern human genes influencing them. Only the other way around. And
although it was 360,000 years ago that humans and Neanderthals diverged from Homo erectus, or
it was about twice
Heidelbergensis.
that. Yeah, it was about double that, really. I mean, we do have DNA from Heidelbergensis, Denisovan split there, Neanderthal, right in that area, a little over 400,000 years ago. It's the whole oldest human DNA we have. We only have part of it, but I mean, what we have that shows that they were diverged by then. But I mean, the current estimate is around 700,000 years ago. Some are saying now it might be pushed back closer to 800,000 years ago. But what my point is that if we expected 1 million years for total speciation, we would still expect, with some interbreeding going on, for there to be some gene flow between the two a few 100,000 years ago, like we see. If it were freely interbreeding, then we would expect to see the gene flow going in both directions, from us to them, from them to us. We haven't seen that. We haven't seen the evidence for that yet. We see that in our direction, which can happen through hybridization. And I've often used the example of a lion and a tiger can make a liger, but two ligers can't breed and have children, not viable offspring. But let's say a liger could mate back with a female tiger. And then that way you've transferred genes from a lion to a tiger, but not the other way back around, because that's just genetically the way it works out. That's kind of what we're seeing with Neanderthals. Now, if they had survived and maintained separate for the most part for another 200,000 or 300,000 years, I think we would have been a completely different species. But what we're seeing is evolution. We're seeing the divergence. We're seeing that, if we split 700,000 years ago, we're seeing exactly what we would expect at 100,000, 200,000 years ago, with the instances of interbreeding, but not completely free interbreeding between the two. So to me, it's evidence for evolution.
It's kind of like the one drop rule in America. Are you familiar with that?
I'm not sure. No.
Basically, the one drop rule. This was like during the period of like the antebellum South and slavery. The one drop rule stated that if a white person interbred with a black person, their offspring would be technically black, and therefore were subjected to the racist laws. And so what you see as a result, the legacy of this of these racial laws in early America are that you see a large percentage of the black population in the United States are mixed, mulattoes, but you don't see a whole lot of whites who are mixed with blacks. And I'm a historian, so I like to compare different periods.
And the emergence of modern humans is they usually say it's 200,000 years ago.
Yeah, and again, anatomically modern humans 200,000 years ago. There are some people that are saying 320,000 years ago for Homo sapiens, with the fossils found in Morocco. But when you look at those fossils, they show traits of elongated skulls. They show, the brow ridges. They show real archaic traits. And all it is just a matter of paleoanthropologists picking a random thing where they're saying, okay, this is Homo sapiens, or this is Homo sapiens. We see this transition that's really smooth, basically. At some point, you got to call it a Homo sapiens. Now, because we've discovered newer fossils and they're dated at 315,000, but I mean, they show traits of earlier species combined with more modern traits. So
given the new data we have, when would you place the emergence of anatomically modern humans?
Well, I mean, we can
Neanderthal.
by 195,000 years ago, but anything, it could be, depending on how you want to define anatomically modern, it could be as old as 300 million years ago. It's just, everybody doesn't agree on the definitions. So, yeah.
Civilization is a relatively new thing in terms of human history.
Yeah, going back 6,000 years ago, young Earth creationist time, back when the beginning of the universe is when civilization came about.
10 to 12,000 years ago, we got pretty good evidence of civilization.
Well, that's kind of proto-civilization.
What they call the Neolithic Revolution and the Urban Revolution, and eventually you get state formation, which leads to civilizations.
Right.
And that came about in young Earth creationist time, the beginning of the world.
Exactly.
Well, the world can't be any older than the oldest tree, right? Especially that video. So it's like you don't look at things alive today and determine that because the oldest one is 6,000 years old that's how old the Earth is. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, but back on Hugh Ross and Fozell Rana, I admire what they do as astronomers, cosmologists, but when they talk about human origins, you got to take that with a pinch of salt. Like they also said one time that Neanderthals didn't wear clothes. I'm like, where'd you get that idea?
Oh yeah, I mean Hugh Ross will say that their tools were no more than what a chimp uses. He talks about that, and it's just absolutely wrong. I mean, we have evidence they mastered fire. I mean, absolute evidence of that. I mean,
even Homo erectus mastered fire.
Right. But we have evidence for sure that Neanderthals were mixing glues and making spearheads and attaching them with glues and things like that. And I mean, stuff that it takes a lot more thought than what Hugh Ross says goes into it. Again, he compares their tool use with that of chimpanzees, which is crazy. So,
well, I think a lot of people get the whole stereotype about the Neanderthal because it's been used as an insult in modern day society. So I think that's where that comes from.
And as a description for basically art, raw.
and they sort of base that appearance that they're all slouchy and stuff based on the first fossils they found in Germany by
based on some artist interpretations of those fossils, and it wasn't always scientific, but yeah, I mean they really didn't know what they had. They discovered the first Neanderthal fossils before Darwin published Theory of Evolution. So it really was just to people like they really didn't know what they had.
And some get the idea that this more recent interpretation of Neanderthals as more human than we originally thought is kind of sensationalist. You ever heard that?
I'm sorry, what was it again? I was looking at the chat. I wanted to check the chat. I missed the last sentence.
You ever come across people who say that the more recent conclusions that Neanderthals were more human than originally thought is kind of sensationalist?
I don't know. I think people are accepting that, we were wrong, I think some people push it extreme to the opposite, and say they were no different than modern humans. Now, what you got to look at is modern humans, okay, at 37,000 years ago and older, all right, then I would say, yeah, they weren't that much different. We don't see evidence of art. I mean, we see some scratchings or something with Neanderthals. We see some real primitive stuff that could be attributed to Neanderthals. We see jewelry that might be an eagle talon or a shell with a hole drilled in it. Okay, it's pretty basic stuff. But if you look at what we see with modern humans at that same time, we don't see much different either. The big cognitive revolution that we see with modern humans
50,000 years ago.
Right, but it really started to happen at 35,000 years ago, where we start seeing evidences of figurines and the earth goddess type things and evidences of religion and that. So if you want to say that Neanderthals weren't much different than modern humans at the time they lived, I'll agree. They weren't much different. If you want to say they weren't much different than modern humans today, no, I wouldn't agree with that. So, yeah.
So who knows what we'll find in the years to come when it comes to this kind of research? Maybe we'll find some kind of Neanderthal civilization.
That would be cool, but yeah, probably not too likely. You know, I don't know what, you know, they could have been hut builders and building, you know, enormous lean-tos and things. We'll never know, because that type of stuff doesn't preserve. They get the reputation of being cavemen because we find a lot of artifacts and bones in caves, because caves preserve things well.
Right.
So, you know, who knows what else we'll find, but a lot of that early evidence to like that stuff is going to be made out of wood or things that were, you know, not going to survive, not going to last. So, yeah.
It's all interesting though.
And what do you make of the you commented earlier on the art thing about making a few scribbles, like it's not really legitimate art. Like, do you agree that it was made by Neanderthals, or could humans have arrived earlier than we previously thought?
Well, there is some in some of that, and I'd have to go back and research, but I mean, around 40,000 years ago in Spain or something, there is some stuff that they're saying could be attributed to Neanderthals.
Yeah, they dated to like 60,000 years ago.
60,000, yeah.
It's like 10,000 years before the Big Bang of human consciousness.
Right. Okay. So then, you know, I mean, it could be. We just, I mean, we're really speculating either way as to who did it. But again, it's still pretty primitive stuff. You know.
Yeah.
You know, it's not. They weren't not the Chauvet cave paintings. You know. So,
well,
like,
I mean, they're pretty much on the same level as modern day modernity paintings.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear it. What was that?
Modernity paintings.
Oh, because how bad modern art is.
Yeah.
Oh,
I said they're pretty much on the same level nowadays.
yeah, I can't compare it to like the Renaissance or something.
Right. Right.
Like, what are the most interesting facts you can tell the dear audience about Homo habilis, erectus, heidelbergensis, and Neanderthals?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I would say watch my opening presentation with, you know, Ken Hovind debate if you haven't seen it, because I really took 20 minutes and I go through Lucy to modern humans. You know, one of the things that I would say is that's different from when I went to school, what we taught in the 70s and 80s, even, and stuff like that, is, you know, they used to teach that it was a ladder-like progression from one species to the next. But one thing that we've learned, especially in the last 15, 20 years with a lot of new discoveries, is that at any given time, there was a lot of variation. And we had a lot of different types of closely related hominids alive at the same time. You know, between 200,000 and 300,000 years ago, as recent as that, you have Homo naledi. You still have Homo heidelbergensis. You still have Homo erectus. You have Homo floresiensis. You have Homo rhodesiensis. You have, now some of these people there's lumpers and splitters. You know, some of them will split Homo erectus and you know, into two different species, Asian and African. Some won't. But I mean, we had at least 7 different distinct body plans, types, or whatever of humans that were enough to where most people would consider them species living at the same time between 200 and 300,000 years ago. And that's pretty recent. You know, we didn't know that 30 years ago. Again, we thought it was one species to the next. And there's never any clear transition of, you know, this species to the next, because even like I said, with the earliest Homo sapiens at 300,000 years ago, they show traits of both. And you know, to me, in my mind, those are all transitional. They're all transitional fossils or transitional species, because they clearly show traits of both. There's a new interesting find where they found this young Littlefoot in Africa, South Africa, and some people are assigning it to Australopithecus africanus, and now others are trying to put in a new species. And where we see with Africanus still had the longer arms compared to legs, shorter legs, this one shows shorter arms, longer legs, closer to a human, and yet it dates, you know, over 2.5 million years old. So it actually shows a more anatomically human almost than some of the specimens of Homo habilis that came later. So again, there was just a lot of variation around that time. Homo habilis is probably 2 or 3 closely related species lumped together because we don't have enough fossils yet. So,
like, isn't Homo erectus the longest lasting human species?
it is, but if you look at early Homo erectus, like the Demonisi skulls, they still had small head, compared to ours. Anatomically from the neck down, they were pretty close, but in the face, they would look like Australopithecus africanus. I mean, the bone structure and the facial structure, and they, even though their brain was 1.5 times the size of Australopithecus africanus, it's still half the size of modern human. But that's 1.8 million years ago at Homo erectus. Now, if you look at Homo erectus 1 million years later, the cranial capacity that is going to be at the lower end of what a modern human is. So a long time there, but a lot of variation is assigned to Homo erectus. And most of our Homo erectus fossils are from Asia, though. I mean, 75% of them come from Southeast Asia. So
yeah, there's erectus in China, and then it's basically the same species, Ergaster, in Africa, Southern Africa.
Right.
I was wondering, does that have to do with like the geography, like just the area itself? It just makes it easier to preserve things.
Somewhat, or it could be that more people like the island of Java down that area, Indonesia. I mean, there's tons of Homo erectus, but yeah, I mean, I don't know specifically about the geology of that area, why they're so well preserved.
Well, the jungly areas of Southeast Asia, it does make it easier for preservation of ancient artifacts to be preserved. Like in Cambodia, for example, they recently just found a bunch of old artifacts from the Hindu era in Khmer history, and they had survived the purges of the Khmer Rouge solely because they were hidden deep beneath the mucky ground. So
typically, though, with hominid fossils, at least, what we find is rapid areas of rapid sedimentation and volcanic activity, like the Afar region in East Africa, preserve fossils really well. If it was jungle when they lived there, they probably weren't preserved that well, because if something dies and falls on the floor of a jungle, what happens? I mean, it gets eaten up by bacteria and whatever. But if it's in an area that might be more arid, but a lot of sedimentation is going on. We got rivers, we got floodplains, things like that, where something can be buried in an accident like that. Then that tends to preserve them. And then
I was going to say Southeast Asia gets really rainy.
Yeah.
What's the earliest hominid species? Sahelanthropus, was it 7 million years ago?
Yeah. I mean, assigned to hominids. Yeah. Yep.
They're the first ones to walk upright.
Right. First evidence of bipedalism. Yeah. And more than, we don't know, if they habitually or if they were obligate bipeds, but they show evidence that they could walk upright better than, say, a chimp or an ape today, anything alive today. And that goes back 7 million years. So we've got an almost unbroken chain. I know we're right around 5.5 million years. There's kind of a little gap there, but, picking back up into 4 millions with Ardipithecus and everything.
And then the first step in human evolution was during Lucy's time. Australopithecus started experimenting with tools from like bone and stone, stuff like that, and it got more sophisticated when Homo habilis came to the scene, like 2 million years ago.
Yeah, I mean, we see evidence of tool use 2.5 to 3 million years ago, right in that area. But it is more of broken rocks than then we see the Oldowan style, where at least we see the same shapes and sizes being kind of repeated over again, and it looks like something was done with a purpose in mind. I mean, somebody sat down to make a tool this shape. We start to see that, and then it was about 1.5 to 1.75 million years ago with Homo erectus that we start to see the hand axe and other more defined tools. Yeah, fire by 1 million years ago, probably.
How can we tell when fire was when they stopped grabbing fire from nature, like thunderstorms, and started making it from scratch?
Grabbing fire from thunderstorms is a kind of a hypothesis that doesn't make a lot of sense in my mind, because I would be fleeing. I wouldn't be running towards it. But so I don't know. I've thought about that.
You got a couple years of doing this. So
yeah, but I mean, if you're making stone tools and you're making stone tools out of flint, okay, it isn't be long until you've got some pyrite or something in your hand, and you're going to start to see, okay, this is sparking, and we have evidence, like I said, of Neanderthals doing that, using that. And somewhere along the line, they discovered that banging two types of rock together is going to make a spark, or that friction makes heat, and enough friction will start a fire. So, we start to see evidence of fire pits in layers, and that is the best evidence of controlled fire use right there. So.
All right. As to the topic of evolution in of itself, like you told me one time you take fault with anti-theists and their approach to all this. Like, tell us about that.
Well, I think we covered that a little bit. Did we or did we not talk about?
Before we went live.
Okay, yeah. I mean, just when people use terms like sky daddy or goat herders and things like that, when they're communicating with people, you're building a wall with that person. You're no longer communicating with them. You're no longer having a discussion, and you may have people cheering you on behind you, but and that's encouraging you. But I mean, you're not going to reach anybody that way. You're not going to make a difference. You're not going to change any minds. While 90% of these people have minds made up, there are other people out there, and it might be not the person you're talking to. It might be the one listening that is going to understand better what you say if you do it the proper way. So. And
when the new atheist movement kicked off in like the mid 2000s, it was built on this false dichotomy between evolution and higher power. And that sort of got it into their heads that there's this reactionary thing among the young Earth creationists, and it became more dogmatic ever since.
Yeah, and definitely. I mean, the biggest argument is between atheists and young Earth creationists. A lot of old Earth creationists and atheists are very cordial and get along very well. As long as, like you said, the atheist is an anti-theist and isn't going to try to damn all religion, and so I have an opinion about religion that, I mean, you may not enjoy hearing, but I believe it is a product of evolution. So I believe that there were selective advantages to religion, especially when we reach the point of civilizations and that, to where religion was a positive thing in the evolution of human beings.
You know what? I agree 100%. That's what I think too. Religion was largely evolutionary with the state, as it were, or state formation and civilizations. And we can look at many different subsistence level tribes where you typically get like the basic model of religion, in that you have the temporal who is the chieftain or whatever, and then you have like the spiritual head who is like the mystic the mystic goes into trance and whatnot, or the shaman or whatever. Yeah. And we see that even like all the way up to like 1789, we see the different monarchs throughout the old world. Like in Europe, you have the kings who are intertwined with the Catholic Church or the Protestant Church or whatever. And the same thing in Islam, you see the caliphs are intertwined with the mullahs or whatever. You catch my drift, or?
I don't know what's funny is that I've now known some anti-theists are moving from saying that the Catholic Church believed that the anti-theists used to say all the time that the Catholic Church believed that the Earth was flat in the Middle Ages.
That's a 100% BS.
Yeah, that's not true, but I know they're sort of transitioning from that to saying that Muslims back then believed that the Earth was flat, and I'm like, Muslims have known the Earth isn't flat since almost right after Muhammad. It's like
they preserved the works of the ancient Greeks, who already proved the Earth was round like a few centuries before Jesus.
Yeah, so I mean, it's sort of stupid that they think that. I mean, I always find they take the most uncharitable view that you can take, and then just increase it 2 times that.
Well, not to mention from the time of Muhammad all the way up to about the 11th century, the Islamic world was the center. It was the perfect breeding ground for science, because it was in the middle of the old world.
The golden age of it.
Yeah. So they could have access to Chinese technologies in the Far East, and they could have access to old Greek works that they had access from the Byzantine Empire. So,
well, I mean, it's still a breeding ground.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but anyway, a lot of these pro-evolution channels by non-believers are a lot of the time filled with commenters that don't necessarily make theists feel welcome. It's really unfortunate that the loudest among believers have to be the ones that make us look bad.
Yeah, there's a lot of bad information comes out on both sides. That's for sure.
Yeah. Like, do you agree that a better solution to educate young earthers is to work with theistic evolutionists such as Biologos, Sentinel Apologetics, Inspiring Philosophy, Wayne Fillmore, and guys like them, and to speak out against both extremes who keep pushing this narrative that evolution and God are incompatible?
Yeah, I mean, if you're combating young Earth creationism, yes, yeah. I mean, you want to cooperate with others that have the same goal as you do, and if their goal is if you're an atheist and they're Christian, but they're anti-young Earth creationists because they believe that it's ruining young minds, then yes, I mean, by all means, reach out to those people and see what you can do to help each other.
Like, sometimes I feel...
I think what's good about it. Oh, I think what's good about like atheists working with Old Earth evolutionist Christians is that I believe the Christians can contribute because they share a same sort of story with the young Earth creationists. Like that, like they have a bit more in common with the young Earthers than the atheists and the young Earthers are going to come into it. So that might help, like, sort of be a branch, like, in order to get a young Earther to think about it more, because it's one thing to say, like, an atheist that's coming up to them and saying that they're wrong and everything, say, well, they're just godless heathens, I don't need to listen to them. But if they have other Christians coming up to them and telling them, and say, oh, maybe I need to think about this. So I think it's good to have, like, the information coming from both sides on there.
And sometimes I feel like a lot of ideological atheists are overly fascinated with evolution for the wrong reasons.
Now, what was that? Say that again.
I said sometimes I feel a lot of ideological atheists are overly fascinated with evolution for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. I don't. The atheists that I know that aren't involved with the evolution creation debate type thing, and that, I mean, I don't think they really think about it all that much. I don't think evolution is any kind of religion or anything like some people say it is, because most atheists don't really care. I mean, they're going on doing atheist things, but leading normal lives, but I don't know. I don't know. Some people definitely have.
I remember it was funny because, like, I remember Atheist Republic. It's one I'm a frequent one on, and they actually made the same mistake in regards to evolution that a lot of young Earth creationists make, where they conflated evolution with abiogenesis. And I'm
really?
They actually did that, and I actually got one of my atheist friends on Twitter, Jackson.
Jackson, you know him, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I actually got him to say, "Hey, it looks like even atheists can get this stuff wrong too," and he just said, "Yep."
Jackson is going to be. I'm interviewing Jackson, or we're doing a show together Tuesday night on my channel. It's my first live show, whatever. I've got Paul Entz, Apologia. Tony Reed, and then Jackson Wheat. So the four of us are going to do a little show together there. So
Apologia has replaced Thunderfoot in terms of relevance. Yeah.
Well, is Thunderfoot even making anything anymore?
He mainly moved away from the atheist stuff for a while and is concentrating on battling SJWs and stuff like that.
He doesn't do that anymore. Really, he mostly just does science videos, like where he talks about space science or whatever.
And going after Elon Musk for some strange reason.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know, for some he has a weird hate boner for Elon Musk. It's like whenever Elon Musk gets really, because Elon Musk is like one of those kind of people that he goes up and down in popularity. Like, he'll have 1 month when he's really up there, and then they'll have 1 month where he's not really mentioned a lot. Whenever he gets really up, like if he's working on a new project, Thunderfoot has a mission in order to just show how wrong Elon Musk is.
I like how he sticks it to the SJWs and went after Hovind and his Why Do People Laugh at Young Earth Creationist series.
Yeah, but even
That
then,
was a good series.
he kind of fell out of favor with the anti-SJW community because he went after Lauren Southern.
Anyway, like, yeah. So, sure, I lost my train of thought. Go ahead.
So, what's the story behind your channel URL? What was it?
My channel?
Yeah.
Yeah, I upload response videos to correcting anti-theist propaganda, and also videos like educating people on biblical historical context and stuff like that.
But what's the URL that you chose? Wasn't it?
HistoryNet.
Is that what it is? Okay.
Yeah, the channel name. It's a parody of ScienceNet.
Not the name, but the URL. I was looking at that. Let me see if I can find it. Oh no. Okay. Oh, never mind.
Yeah.
Oh, here, user Paradise City.
Yeah, that's my ex's email that I usurped.
Oh, okay, never mind. Well, we won't email her.
It'll go to me anyway. But.
Okay, I saw that. I thought maybe he's a big Guns N' Roses fan or something. I don't know. You
know. Sweet child of mine.
Oh God. All right.
But anyway, back for the. Also, the anti-theists get the idea that the church was always young Earth creationists throughout its history, but that's just not true, because like for like hundreds of years, like even thousands, they've had this idea that there's the book of the scriptures, the Bible, and then there's the book of nature, which can be revealed through natural philosophy, aka science. And if one ended up contradicting the other, that would mean their interpretation is wrong, and they would like try to resolve that. Like there's this one guy during the Middle Ages, during the 12th century Renaissance, named William Conscious. Like he would he got to reading the creation account in Genesis, and put more thought into it, and was like, wait a minute, how can you have day before the sunlight comes? Because on day 4 the sun comes about, and before that there wasn't sun. Like how did that happen? Like, this is not a literal book. So they had to
another fun thing that people weirdly always like. This is another fun question. Like, how can you measure a day without the sun? The sun, like the sun and the earth. Like, how do you get there without the either one? And,
yeah. So it's recent. So it's through recent decades, through scholarship, that we found out that the biblical writers were not making scientific statements at all. The creation account in Genesis is mostly polemic against other creation myths of pagan religions, such as the Babylonian, Egyptian creation accounts, and basically taking theological jabs at the other gods and saying, well, look at your gods. They're so pathetic. They need to depend on each other. Our God, the one God, did it all by himself.
Yeah, so it's very in your face. It's all about the ponage, as they say.
Yeah. So where did this young Earth creationist bullshit come from? Like, it didn't really like.
Well, the Seventh Day Adventists, I mean, around the end of the late 1800s,
Yeah, that's where it's getting at. But,
right. Yeah, and you really didn't see a lot of it until let's say the 1920s was the first surge or whatever.
Phillips trial.
Yeah. Then with Morris in the early 60s with his book, Genesis Flood and that thing too, that's when you start seeing the emergence of the modern organizations like Institute for Creation Research and things like that sprang up in the 70s and stuff from that.
And it didn't really become dogmatic until like the 2000s, if I remember.
Well, even before that, but it just didn't seem like they could reach as many people. Now with the internet and everything, it's just a whole different thing. Before it was distributing pamphlets or in your own church and talking about it. Now you can reach a wide audience in many different ways, with modern communications made a difference. So, but their numbers are still dwindling overall. I mean, they may be rising in numbers, but so is the population. It's just as a percent of the population, they're getting smaller. So.
Yeah, flat earthers are also on the rise, and that's disturbing as well.
That just doesn't even make sense to me. And you know, the only person I like personally know who's a flat earther has always been into conspiracy theories and things like that. You know, it's just somebody that kind of always has been on the edge of how do you want to say it, modern normal beliefs or whatever. And I think he just enjoys that, you know. I think he enjoys testing everyone. So I don't know if he believes it or not, or if he just likes to play that game, you know.
We know a certain someone who entertains conspiracy theories and actually thinks the moon landing was faked.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just very funny about that. I'm actually subscribed to a flat earther. Well, yeah, I'm subscribed to a flat earth channel, and it's like I'm mainly just watching for comedy because, for what, like, when he's actually is joking, he's pretty hilarious. But when he's not joking and he's actually being serious, he's still hilarious. So it sort of goes like that. It's like, yeah, that's funny. Like, flat eartherism is like so stupid that even Answers in Genesis is going after them. When your movement, when you have Answers in Genesis saying you're teaching scientific nonsense, you've hit the bottom.
Well, they say that about evolution, though, too. So I don't know, but I know what you mean. When they're able to successfully do it, then you've hit the bottom, right?
Yeah. Like when you start making Answers in Genesis look like the scientific group,
Right.
That's when you really hit the bottom.
Yeah.
When I'm having to start to like, that's what I'm starting to hate about flat earthers now, because now all of a sudden now happen to see Cam is slightly smarter than I do now because he happens to not be that stupid. He's still stupid, but he's mildly not that more stupid.
Oh yeah, what do you think of Ken Ham and Cheese? Like, do you think he's he's really this ignorant and stubborn in his dogmatic heresy, or is he like trying to sell you something?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if he believes it or not. I mean, I think he probably does. But I mean, he's actually a good salesman. He's a good businessman. He went to the right part of the country at the right time, and
he was chased out of Australia in the late 80s.
Right. He started his own business there. Guys like Eric Hovind, I sincerely doubted that Eric Hovind, and I still do, really believes what he's saying most of the time. I think he inherited the business from his father for reasons, and I think that Eric was all act in the beginning, and whether he believes it now, I'm not so sure. But he just was repeating, what his father said and stuff. It's just like these guys that are faith healers. Do they actually believe they're healing people? I mean, I don't know. I kind of wonder about that. Like
that's not how prayer works, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're selling something. They're selling something to people that want to hear it, and the only reason that they're still doing it is people are buying it, So I don't know. I don't know. I think that for the most part, I would say some of them believe it and some of them don't. I just find it hard to believe that they actually fall for it themselves. Even
the people that buy it believe it. The people that are selling it probably don't. Which is
y'all got any more questions before I read the live chat?
No, I'm pretty good.
Comrade?
Oh, I'm pretty good. I love commenting on these kind of things.
All right, let's see.
While you're getting ready to read them, I want to just do a shout out to a Facebook group. It's the one that's called, believe it or not, Kent Hovind, the man, the ministry, and the message. I joined that group, I don't know, probably 6 months before I debated Kent Hovind. And one of the reasons I joined it, or one of the reasons I got active in it, because I was going to debate Kent Hovind. I wanted to, So I wanted to hear all the arguments and kind of argue against, some of it and stuff. And it's just a very well administered group. And actually now the main admin is a former Young Earth Creationist. He used to be a big Kent Hovind fan. And then we have an atheist admin and an Old Earth Creationist admin. So in that group. So they're not you know, it's very diverse, and it's run very well. And you know, check it out, Kent Hovind, the man, the ministry, and the message. Now, there's a fake group by that name with 100 people. Don't talk about the one that has about 5,000 members. So it's more than an echo chamber, more than just an echo chamber. It's not all young Earth creationists. It's not all atheists. It's a good mix of group of people too. So.
And that's what Naomi Scott said in the live chat. Heard there's a very cool Hovind Facebook group.
Yep, that's what we're talking about.
Dave M says, "Oh no! So dinosaurs didn't fight giants in the ring as Ken depicts?"
Yeah, the Colosseum
in Rome. Abel's Kane brother says, "I used to be a young Earth creationist until I researched all creation interpretations, and now I'm a gap theory old Earth creationist."
Good for him.
Somebody's asking when I'm going to do a music video, but I'm working on an original score right now. Song, so
Oh, sweet.
yeah.
Robert Batty says, "I've got a Hovind Facebook page and website I think are cool. I'm popularly known as Kent's worst nightmare."
Who is it saying that?
Robert Batty.
Oh, Robert Beatty. Yeah, Robert is, I believe, a former IRS agent, and he knows better than anyone else I know the history of Kent's felonies and why Kent really did get in trouble. And like when Kent says, "I didn't do anything wrong, they framed me," or you know, everybody else that has done this was pardoned, he's wrong. No.
Didn't he go to jail for evading taxes?
Yeah.
What was that? Did what? Oh, yeah, he was 9 years. Well, it wasn't really tax evasion. There was structuring, but it was more than just structuring. Kent only mentions the structuring. He doesn't mention the other things, which Robert would be much more qualified than me to explain. But you know, there was also non-reporting of employee things and stuff that went along with it. So Kent had, I don't know, 50-something counts of felonies, and I mean,
Basically, tax fraud.
overall, yeah.
He also says, "Maybe Bill will give me a shout out." And Naomi and Scott replies, "Just for once, please don't start ranting about tax. We're trying to enjoy the sweet sound of Bill."
All right. I'm blushing.
Abel's Kane brother says, "A problem I see is..."
Yeah, the 4th of July just passed. We don't need to talk about taxes.
Yeah. Abel's Kane brother says, "A problem I see is how most people who reject young Earth creationism accept evolution. It's like it's either young Earth creationism or evolution."
Correct.
Yeah.
And you don't have that problem with theistic evolutionists or your old Earth creationists. I mean, mostly. And that's why we can unite against young Earth creationists.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the gap theory is supposed to be that there was a former world on Earth and that world perished, then there was a gap, then God made this world. In other words, 2 different worlds. I don't even know how to respond to that.
You could say it's a new world.
He also says we would say Neanderthals as well as hominids, Cro-Magnon, etc. were pre-Adamite races that once lived in the former world. Okay.
Interesting.
Let's read other people. Some guy in Foreign Letters says, "I watched your debate with Hovind. I was taking a course in anthropology, and I, as a theist, thank you for exposing that pseudoscience con artist."
You're welcome. Like I said, I get a lot of messages like that from Christians, you know, because I didn't attack the religion. I attacked young Earth creationism and the nonsense that Kent Hovind teaches. There's a big difference.
Just keep in mind you're a heretic, and according
I'm going to burn in hell. I know that.
According to anti-theists.
Well, hey, I'll be there to keep you company, because according to his Protestant theology, we Eastern Orthodox are also heretics. So I'll keep you company in hell.
No, I mean you're heretics according to anti-theists. Like friend of forever. Like you've heard of him.
Adam, you know, Adam friended.
It's
Yeah.
probably late reading the live chat.
Wait, I was thinking, didn't he have a little argument with Armin Nababi?
No, that was Apostate Prophet.
Oh yeah, that's right.
He's an ex-Muslim who's also sympathetic to religion, not sympathetic to Christianity in particular. But all right, let's do this. Sadie Marine Jones says, "Hey, HistoryNet, Hart, and hey, Bill."
Hey, Sadie.
Dave M says, Thunderfoot is still active. He's working on educational videos and keeping it clean so teachers can use them. I didn't know teachers use his videos, but Dave M also says that Ken Ham can't stand Hugh Ross, so he's doing something right. Jeez. Naomi Scott says, question for Bill. Who's the coolest kid?
Out of this group? I have no idea. I don't know what you mean.
We're all special.
Also, is there anyone he wouldn't debate?
Who, me?
Yeah, I guess.
Oh, well, I Nephilim free again, and not because he did such a good job. Yeah, I'm trying, and a lot of people have asked me and encouraged me to debate Kent Hovind again. But you know what? I right now I don't have that goal. I mean, I've been trying to get his son Eric to debate. Eric is working on a movie, on the Grand Canyon. You know how he did the big Genesis movie, the 3D thing? He's trying to do something similar on the Grand Canyon now, and from a young Earth perspective. And he's teaming up with a guy named Russ Miller, who's out of Flagstaff, who does these tours of the Grand Canyon for young Earth creationists, guided tours on the rim, but also rafting tours. And I'm teaming up with Ken Wolgamuth, who's one of the authors and editors of Grand Canyon, A Monument to an Ancient Earth, the book that it came out. And it was written by mostly Christians, but people all with a geology background. And it refutes all the creationist arguments, young Earth creationist arguments about the Grand Canyon and the formation of that Noah's flood. And great book. And anyway, I'm trying to team up with Ken. He's already agreed to do it. We just can't, get Eric trying to get Eric and Russ Miller together and do it live on stage if possible. But if not, on the internet. So
yeah, Noah's flood was also a literary device. It's not scientific.
Right. And it tells a great story. Well, it tells a story. I mean, it puts fear in people's hearts is what they want to do. But it talks about the how people sin and God is going to wipe them out or whatever. But I mean, there's things you can learn from that as a Christian or whatever without taking it literally. That's for sure. So
yeah. When it was intended. Another guy with the foreign letters says, question to Bill. Have you ever thought of writing a book debunking young Earth creationism with anthropological research?
Yeah, I have a bit. Right now I'm working on some videos and stuff, but it's possible. I know Arn Ra has written a book on some stuff. If I do it, I want it to be different. I'm not sure. I guess my actual research I'm doing right now is more along the lines of paleontology than anthropology. Even though paleoanthropology is my main interest, I live in Arizona. We don't study paleoanthropology in Arizona in the field. There are no human origins type, 2 million-year-old apes out here. So I don't know. I mean, it's a good question, but it's something I'll look into. Now, if you haven't seen my website lately, creationsciencefiction.com, it has been overhauled. I mean, I spent a couple weeks working on it. It features documentaries, lectures, debates. I have right now, I think 50 links alphabetized that take you to either an article or a short video by myself, Tony Reed, Apologia, others, Jackson Wheat, where I'm picking specifically short, concise videos that get to the point of what it is you're looking for. I mean, if you want to look up ocean salinity as an argument against an old Earth, and bam, you can go right to it. It's all alphabetized. Right, I said 50 topics right now, and within the next 2 to 3 weeks, I'll have about 100 topics. So you're going to be able to, like, Talk Origins used to be a resource for people, but it's more like a list thing. It's not a, I mean, it's not easy to negotiate or anything like that. This is modern. It's easy to negotiate. You can go right there, alphabetical, boom, go right to it. And it's modern research and input too. It's not 20, 30 years old. So
Naomi Scott also says, I am picturing you with Ray Comfort and a banana. That's another fuckwit.
I'm going to kill you, Naomi. Well, you know.
I mean, that'd be a funny debate. You versus Ray Comfort.
Yeah, I was tempted to do that. I mean, I have relatives in California, and but you never know when he's going to show up at the beach there and start doing the street preaching. But I'd love to run into him one of these times.
You see, the thing is, when debating Hovind and Comfort, is that their sycophantic followers will. It's like Dillahunty and Aaron Ross followers. They're just going to cheer them on. It's literally no matter what you say, what their opponent says.
I mean, what I would say is, like, you put, like, in a debate, you're going to have, like, people that uncritically accept what you say and what your opponent says off the bat. What you should be going for is not to convince, like, someone that's already had their mind convinced already, but try to go for the people that maybe they're on the fence. They don't know one way or the other. And you can just sort of be the voice that gets them to either to go to your side.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the purpose of debating, I think.
Yeah, it's not to convince the person you're debating, it's to convince the audience who come in good faith.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. You need to realize that going into it. And no one's ever going to change Kent Hovind's mind. But if you can effectively combat his style and his presentation, then you might be, I'm actually going to be on Steve McRae's channel tomorrow morning. I don't know exactly what time it's going to be at. Probably around noon or 1 Eastern Standard Time, where we're going to critique some of the recent Ken Hovind debates. So, because honestly, I mean, there's ways of doing things well, and there's ways of not doing it. And if you're going to go into it unprepared, and you're going to go into it and smirk and mock, then don't go into it. You know, I mean, in the eyes of 90% of people, he's going to win, whether you had the right information or not. If you're not prepared,
I don't know why you let Hovind on his channel all that more than once.
Yeah,
he's friends with Hugh Ross, though. He considers him competent. Yeah. Guy with the foreign letters says, one more question: is there paleoanthropological evidence for the Yeti?
Right here.
We thought you were the abominable snowman.
Oh no, I don't think there is. I don't know. I haven't looked into it. That's cryptozoology isn't my thing.
It's interesting. Like, I know that there's a couple of biologists that actually are interested in the whole Bigfoot Yeti stuff. I mean, because it's sort of it's one of those things that people just find interesting. I mean, I think it is interesting too. I mean, there's a bunch of questions I have if such a Bigfoot or a Yeti existed.
It took me for fucking ever to find Bigfoot in Grand Theft Auto San Andreas.
Well, at least you found him, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, and then he ran away. Then he went away.
I think what you got to realize about any creature alive today is you've got to have a population of them for them to have survived this long. And even when we discovered the coelacanth after so many million years, we thought it was extinct. We weren't looking in the right place. Okay, you know, the modern coelacanth lives 500 feet below the ocean in caves. All right, so we weren't looking 500 feet. We didn't have the ability to look 500 feet, below the ocean in caves. Almost the whole time we thought it was extinct. Somebody ends up catching one. We start to go around. We find out, okay, yeah, they're down there. Does that mean everyone, means that we were wrong in thinking they went extinct, even though the current species aren't the same as the species we see in the fossil record. Now we know where to look. There are populations of them. How do you hide a population of Bigfoot? I mean, there's supposedly been cited, Oregon, Washington, places like that. I lived in Portland, Oregon in the 90s. I mean, I've been in those remote areas and gone camping and fishing and hiking in those places. And how do you just? I mean, all those areas have been covered by people now, but yet they still have sightings. How do you miss it? So, to me, it's
strange how these sightings appear in the West.
Yeah.
Naomi Scott says, "Good chat, guys. Cheers. Thumbs up and kissy winky face." All right. Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I think this was a very good chat. I actually think it was fun having Bill on.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, I had a good time.
Yeah.
I definitely like talking to open-minded atheists because I do think there's a lot of commonalities we can have against idiots like young Earth creationists and whatnot.
And it's also, I learned a bit about evolution, so if nothing else, I can say I learned something.
Same here. I'm a historian, not an evolutionary guy, but I take from the experts.
Fanatical history buff here, and prehistory catches a mild interest.
That's great. Well, I had a great time. So,
all right, you got any closing thoughts?
Oh, we're done. Or I'm done.
Bill?
No, I'm good. Thanks.
All right. Share, like, and subscribe to all of us, and see you next time.